should be live.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Steve Curran. I'm the leader of the council, and my portfolio is planning and regeneration. So welcome to this cabinet meeting. I'm going to ask the cabinet members to introduce themselves when they speak as we go through the reports. We've got a pretty busy agenda, and after agenda item 10 and 11, we then go into private session, so we exclude members of the public, and that's because we're discussing a confidential report. And councillors who are not on cabinet, of course, can stay on the call if they've made those arrangements. Okay, so welcome everyone. We've got apologies for absence. We don't have anyone, but we have got lateness for Councillor Lambert, unless he's joined us while I've been speaking. We've then got declarations of interest. So are there any cabinet members with declarations of interest? Could you please let me know?
Leader. So on this, my hand is not available, so apologies if I have to interject a couple of times. But yes, for report number 4 on
Could you just say who you are, please?
Yeah, sorry, my name is Councillor Hanif Khan, and I'm the for Traffic and Transport and the One Hounslow project. And so I declare an interest that I have a family member who is part of that team that we're discussing on item number 4.
Okay, so he's a Metropolitan Police Officer.
Police officer, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. We then move on to agenda item 2, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July, pages 1 to 4. So I'll take any inaccuracies and matters arising together, if I may. So page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Any comments, matters arising? No. So if you're happy, I'll sign those off. Thank you. We then move on to agenda item 3. And I'm going to ask Councillor Catherine Dunn to introduce this. And then we're going to ask, she will be asking Councillor Richard Foote, who's chair of the licensing committee, to speak to the report as well. So that's what we're going to do. So Catherine, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I'm Councillor Catherine Dunn, Cabinet Member for Communities and Climate Emergency, which my portfolio covers regulatory services, including licensing, and I'm bringing this report jointly with Councillor Richard Foote, who is chair of the licensing committee, and he will go into more detail about what we were consulting on and the changes that are being brought through this report. I'd just like to say that it was a very extensive and well responded to consultation that brought in a lot of views and opinions from the public, and I'm very pleased at the way that we've taken those on board and produced this report. But as I said, I'll hand over to Richard now, who will go into some of the more detail.
Thanks, Catherine. Richard, over to you.
Right, thank you, Chair. Right, I'm trying to make sure I'm live. You can hear me?
You are. You're fine.
Okay, right, fine. Okay, yeah, thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I'm going to try and restrict these through to probably the points on the you'll see in the about page 21 of the licensing report, which is the various licensing policy principles, etc. It starts with, but goes on from there. Right, talking about the actual consultation, we were very, very pleased with the result. It's been compared with similar consultations in central London boroughs like Westminster, exception with their licensing, where they got a similar number of responses as we got. So, you know, we've had a very strong response from the public, largely in favour. I say largely in favour, definitely in favour of our stance on licensing. Going through the detail, I think there are a number of central issues around it. A lot of issues in here, you know, so there's 200 pages in the report, but a lot of issues in here. Some of the most significant, I think, because of our emphasis on the nighttime economy that we put together in our plans for the borough, it's important when we look at that we also look at balancing that with the licensing activities in the residential part of the borough. And for that, we have the core licensing hours, which is a new introduction in licensing that's come forward, very well received.
You've frozen, unfortunately, Richard.
Sorry, Chair, it appears that Councillor Foot has dropped out, who's having some...
I'm back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's back with us. Thanks, Richard. You'll have to repeat that.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yeah, in terms of the core hours, it's really needs to be balanced against the nighttime economies that we've been looking at in terms of planning, etc., and across the borough. And to balance that, the core hours enables us to look at what the impact of licensing is in the residential areas. Previously, it was we as a council had to challenge any of the ideas being put forward by applicants, and we had to prove that you know, any reasons we would have to change it, rather than the other way round of them proving their need for conditions in the licensing. So the core hours reverses this, because it says that in residential areas we will input core hours of between 9 AM and 2300 Monday to Thursday, Friday to Saturday 9 till midnight, and Sunday 10 to 22:30 will be the core hours. So anybody applying for a license which is outside of those core hours in a residential area will have to prove their case, will have to prove that there is a very valid reason for being open outside those hours, which I think is a fundamental issue on licensing, and really does bring things together that we've been battling over the years. The hours of the sale of alcohol will now be basically from 9 o'clock to 2300. When we look at licenses that, you know, something like 60% of our licenses in the borough were issued before 2006. Now, many of those, because there was a lot of learning going on about licensing, many of those do not have the conditions that we have in licensings that have been issued in recent years. So it's quite important that we start looking at those in that way. The other area that is important is the cumulative impact policy that we've introduced 4 years ago now, which is up for renewal. So we did the consultation, including that, and that was extremely well received by our public. The cumulative impact policy is, and I think it's important to understand this, the cumulative impact policy is looking at the future, the way we want to see areas, and it is not dealing with current problems we may have with licensing. To deal with current problems, then we have enforcement, and that is what we have to use to be able to highlight problem areas or problems with individuals, and we have to deal with those through our enforcement procedures. So this is why it's so important that we look at the two separate, cumulative impact and enforcement, the two issues, or two hands, if you like, on the same body, but they deal with different aspects. Cumulative impact is very well received. We've had some questions about our enforcement. It's very difficult. We've only got one enforcement officer. We desperately need the public to help us if there are problems, and we're talking about dealing with problems, not talking about the 90% of our licensees that work with the borough and create a good job. But there are problem areas where we need the public to assist us in looking at ways and reporting if they know of breaches in licensing rules, and then we can deal with it. But we can't just march in with hobnail boots and just assume that there are breaches if we don't have evidence. All of this, like all licensing policy, is evidentially supported. So, Steve, I don't know how close I am to my 5 minutes. It sounds like I'm about there. I'm trying to see where I am. But
I think you've, if I could come in, it sounds to me, I've read the report, that you've covered some of the main aspects, which is around the changes to the licensing times, etc., the 5-year review, and the cumulative impact work as well. And I know that that's dear to the heart of many residents in the borough. So unless there's anything further you want to add.
No, I'll leave it there. I commend you to look at all of the pictures that you have in your report.
Yeah.
If you can stomach it, but make sure you look at it before your lunch and not after your lunch, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Can I say on behalf of the Cabinet and the Council how grateful we are for the work of you and your committee in producing this report, working with Catherine. It is a great piece of work, and I'm glad it's come to Cabinet. So thank you very much. Catherine, do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
I think Richard's covered most things. Richard, did you mention the model conditions? That's just to draw people's attention to that. The new model conditions that we're bringing in to kind of try and streamline things and make it easier and encourage establishments to obviously adopt the type of rules and conditions that we would hope that all responsible establishments would, going beyond what we can mandate there. Obviously, is in addition, we can encourage good behaviour. So that's the other thing I'd point out. But otherwise, I think it's been adequately covered by Richard. So I would recommend move and commend the report.
Okay, I'll happily second the report. Is there anyone else like to make any comment or questions for either Catherine or Richard? Lily, if you could use your little hand on the button. You haven't got to do it now, but next time if you could.
Sorry, I can't actually find the hand on here. For some reason, it's disappeared. So, right. I just wanted to make a quick comment. It was to welcome the report, and it is a really good report. And Richard, I haven't looked at the pictures. I briefly saw one, but you're right. I think I'll save that till after dinner. But I just really wanted to say that it was really good to see that quite a lot of residents groups have actually participated in the consultation and put forward their views. And I know I'm biased because I represent Heston West area. In fact, I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, I'm Councillor Lily Bath, the Deputy Leader of the Council, and I do actually represent the Heston West area. And I know we've had a number of issues regarding that particular area, but I'm really pleased to see that the cumulative impact area is actually is.
You've gone mute, Lily. That's it. Gone mute again.
It's so sensitive, this thing. Every time I move, it just mutes itself. So anyway, okay. Just to say, welcome the widening of the area in Heston. I think that'll be really great, and I'm hoping that we can deal with have enforcement, deal with some of the issues around there. But no, thank you very much. It was really good. Well done.
Thanks very much, Lily. That's helpful. So are there any other Cabinet members who'd like to make any questions or comments? No? Okay. Councillor Labbott, glad you joined us. Were you here for the beginning of the discussion?
I was not, I regret.
Okay, so I'll ask you not to
being late.
No, I understand that. Thanks very much, but I'd ask you not to vote on this matter, as you weren't here for the whole discussion. Thank you. From the discussion, is there anyone who's not in favour of the recommendations report laid out on page 5, 1.1, and on page 6, where we're asked to advise or note and refer to Borough Council, etc. Is everyone happy with those points? Yeah, no one against, right? Okay, well, that's then unanimously carried, with the exception of Councillor Lambert, because he wasn't here for the whole of that discussion. Thank you very much, Councillor Foote. We'll say goodbye to you now.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, thank you all. Have a good evening.
And see you again. If we move now on, thank you, Richard. If we now move on to agenda item 4, which is community safety strategy development, that's Councillor Dunn. Would you like to introduce the report, Catherine?
Yeah, I will. Sorry, it's just gone small. There we go. So, yeah, so this report is an update to where we're up to with the development of the community safety strategy. We had started to develop the community safety strategy earlier this year, and then various things happened, like COVID, for example, which obviously then put some sort of put a slight delay on things, but also changed things to some extent, as to changed our thinking as to how we wanted to go forward with developing the strategy and the things that we would be wanting to put in place. So I'm asking Cabinet to approve a timescale for putting this in place, which basically we're well on the way, and I would be expecting to bring the completed strategy to Cabinet in January, once it's obviously been approved by Community Safety Partnership Board and so on. The principles that we're looking to adopt in the strategy are the prevention and reduction of crime, a special emphasis on protecting our vulnerable residents, managing and changing offending behaviour, and working with all of our communities to put these into place. Alongside this, and also contained in the report, is a recommendation with regards to the police the police team that is funded by the council. We actually have 2 different sets of officers funded by the council, and one of those contracts expires next month. We had been getting a scheme where it was basically buy one get one free, so for every officer we funded, we got an additional one. That has now changed. It is more expensive. It's called the Partnership Plus team, so there is still some discount, but it would cost the council more to maintain the same number of police officers. Because of the review of our operations that we're wanting to undertake, what I'm asking here, what the report recommends, is that we do renew those contracts, take out the new contracts with MOPAC, but that remains open to review for the next financial year, as we look at all of our community safety and enforcement operations in conjunction with our own team and the police, to make sure that we are doing the best we can in the most efficient way possible. So that's basically what the report is asking to be recommended and to be approved.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I appreciate that. Are there any comments or questions from anyone? Councillor Atherton.
Hi, thank you. I'm Councillor. Hi everyone, I'm Councillor Atherton, lead member for Public Health and Social Care. Yeah, it's a really great report that I welcome, and I'm just really pleased to see that you're recognising the public health model and really looking at prevention of crime and trying to tackle the causes of crime as well as tackling crime itself. I will stop talking because I've got a lot of background noise, but yeah, it's a really great report, and I welcome what the principles that underpin it.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Candice. Anyone else like to make any comments or questions for Catherine? No? Okay, I'm actually on the report, so I'd like to second the report. I think since we had this scheme introduced several years ago, the relationship between MPS and the council has grown and developed. It's a very strong one. It's a partnership one. And I think having the resource of police officers funded by the council, working with the council on a daily basis, working with our officers, whether it's in child protection, whether it's in housing, or whether it's enforcement, it really has brought that team approach, and it's worked very well. So I'm delighted that we're proposing that we're going to review the service, because we should always keep things under review. But I'm also delighted that the report's recommended we should carry on with the funding. That's important. So we have dedicated officers that work on our council estates. That's very important. And as I just outlined, we also have officers that work through a myriad of services we provide for residents through the council. So it's a really strong relationship. So final chance for anyone to say anything? No hands up. So I've seconded the report. I've not heard anyone who doesn't agree with the recommendations on page 200 and page 201, and we're asked to note, approve, agree, and give authority, and approve again to all those bullet points on those two pages, 200 and 201. Is anyone against those points? No, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Catherine. We can now move back to the agenda, and it's agenda item 5, and that's Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chair, Leader. My name's Guy Lambert. I'm a ward member for Brentford and the lead member for Highways, Waste and Recycling and the Council's trading companies. This item is about our trading companies. When I assumed the role of Cabinet Member with responsibility for the trading companies, it was some time previously the decision had been taken to split what was then Facilities Management and is now Coalo off from the main Lambton Group, which for reasons that made sense at the time. But it was clear to me pretty soon in assuming the role that there was a lot of overlap between Coalo and in particular Green Space and the other Lambton companies. Also, it seemed unnecessarily complicated to have two separate sort of lead trading companies. So I was delighted to see that our new chair of Lambton 360 and the chair of Coalo have both agreed and proposed that the companies should restructure to become part of the same group. As always, owned by the council wholly, but with Coalo becoming a subsidiary of Lambton 360 and Green Space becoming a subsidiary of Coalo. Green Space is currently a subsidiary of Lambton 360. And the reason for that is that Coalo also do some grounds maintenance work, and there's some obvious synergies between the work that Coalo does in that area and what Green Space does. And there are also some obvious synergies in the organisation as a whole, particularly over things like HR, health and safety, finance, and all those kind of things. And these will be particularly important as the companies develop more external revenue and need to manage that, manage bids and manage revenue in a better way. The proposal also says we should split Lambton 360 into two operational divisions. One which looks after the operational stuff, which is the bins, the green space and the housing repairs, and one which looks after the investment side and the development side, which is the bricks and mortar side of the business, which is a different kind of activity with different kind of roles. So that's the main thing, is these structural changes. This is the main thing that we're asking Cabinet to approve tonight. The other part of the request is around governance, where again, as the companies have evolved and become more established and more likely to take on external revenue and beginning to do so, the way that we look over them and as they become more mature organisations needs to evolve with that. And so we're asking for a new code of practice to be agreed, which will give more clarity on what the companies can do on their own behalf and what they have to ask permission for, as it were, from the council. So I commend both those things. I think they reflect. We've got the companies to a state where they're very stable, delivering decent services very efficiently, and it's really time to springboard to the next step. And both of these things will assist with that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Guy. Tom, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Guy. Just want to say thank you to you. Thank you to the officers. Thank you to the board and the chairs of the various groups for bringing this forward, because I think it's absolutely the right time to be doing this, and these are the right changes to be making. You said earlier that it made sense at the time that Koalo or facilities management, as it was then, was separate to the other groups, and it did. And I think it's the right time to look at this and make the changes as we go forward. You know, I think you used the word evolution or evolve or something. There's a constant evolution of this sort of groups of companies. They've been a roaring success for Hounslow. They're a real strength of our borough, and it's right that it's great that the chairs and yourself are looking at them, how we can continue to improve them. And it's not a case of standing still, but moving forward. So I absolutely support this, and thank you all once again.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks very much. So any other councillors like to say anything at this stage? No one got their hand up, I can see. Okay, so I'd like to second the report and just add a few comments. So as Tom and Guy have said, this is the company's going through an evolution. It takes time. When I first became a councillor in 2010, Jagdish Sharma, the leader, then talked about setting these companies up, and it was a very slow approach. And I think that's right. I think the way we manage our finances, we're a very prudent council. We're very careful about how we spend the Hounslow pound. That's really important, and our residents and businesses expect us to be careful. And I am more conservative than Councillor Lambert regarding the companies, because I want them to be a success, and I don't want us to lose any money. So I'm delighted with these proposals. I'm delighted with the new governance arrangements and the new structures. And if you think of our waste and recycling team and the praise they got during beginning right the way through COVID, where they never stopped a single day providing excellent service, even in the most difficult times for everyone in the borough. I'm so proud of everything that all our staff did, whether in Koalo, whether in grounds and gardens. They really went the extra mile for the residents and businesses of this borough. So I'm delighted that we move a step closer to bringing those companies together, and that we are aiming for the future to improve, to do better, and to get further income in. So just for people who might think there is a dividend, there isn't a dividend for anyone on the board or for Guy Lambert or myself. It's wholly owned by the company. We don't fly off to the Cayman Islands or anything like that. And any surplus that derives from the company comes back in to the council to support finances in the council. That everyone will know we've been going through austerity since 2010. It's not over yet. So I'm most grateful for everyone involved and all the work they're doing. So we've been asked to agree, approve, recommend, etc., on page 211, agenda item 1, and then just on the top of 212, item 2. So is there anyone not supporting those recommendations, etc.? No, can't see anyone. So again, thanks to everyone involved. Thank you, Guy, for the report. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 6, which is Councillor Lambert again. Guy, over to you.
So, thank you, Leader. You stole my thunder to some extent. This is the performance report on the companies for the Q1 of 2020-21, and you know, essentially, I echo your views about the performance of all the companies, in particular waste and recycling. We think they're the only waste and recycling service in London that has maintained a full set of services throughout. Our complaint rate has gone down. Our missed bins rate has gone down. Our recycling rate has gone up. So there's really, and the financial situation has been stable, despite the fact that we had to collect a lot more rubbish and pay for the rubbish to be disposed of. So that's fantastic performance. Equally, green space had a lot of new challenges thrown at it, particularly in limiting access to the play parks in the time of lockdown, when we didn't want the kiddies to be playing on the machines and spreading COVID that way. That they also have come out of it very well. That the performance has been good. The financial performance is good too. The development arms, the investment arm, as we now know, have 172 properties. They're all tenanted. They're all tenanted by people who were either on the housing list or at risk of homelessness. We're delighted to say we were worried that some of that would be issues with rent arrears. There are not serious issues with rent arrears, so that's going well. That people are very satisfied with their homes. So that's gone well, and the value of the homes has gone up somewhat. So we've got a kind of paper profit for the council. On the development side, we obviously had to stop developing the 2 sites that were on site at the start of COVID, which are Acton Lodge and the Three Bridges site in Bedfont. They've now restarted again, but there's obviously been a hiatus there. There are also extra costs, but we believe that we can, or the companies believe that they can contain the costs within the contingency that they had in the first place. So that's going on nicely. Koalo had a particularly challenging first quarter. Koalo's business is, apart from fixing roofs, leaks in the roof and electric wiring that's gone awry. The main part of their business is fitting new kitchens, bathrooms, windows, etc. to council properties. This planned maintenance activity was suspended pretty well in 100% during the time of the lockdown. because clearly you couldn't be going into vulnerable people's properties and replacing their kitchens with some vulnerable staff as well. So a lot of staff were furloughed, and there's a sort of big hole in their revenue. This, of course, is matched by a saving on the HRA side, because they don't have to pay Koalo to fix kitchens that aren't being fixed. This should all sort of balance out in the wash. But in the short term, Koalo will make a loss this year, as opposed to the budgeted profit, because they clearly can't get that revenue back. And whilst a lot of their workers were furloughed, there's still costs to be covered of what is not covered by the furlough and the people who are not furloughed. So that's the situation. So we're asking for these reports to be approved, but also for to give authority to the Director of Finance to increase the loan arrangement for Koalo from £1 million to £2 million, because they'll need working capital to cover this this loss, which I think from memory is something like 600k. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thanks very much, Guy. First of all, I've got to give an apology to Councillor Bath, because I'm so used to using Teams where you can put your hand up by clicking on the button. On a live event, you can't, and I'd forgotten that. So apologies, Councillor Bath. You put your hand up anytime you want now. So apologies. I've got Samuel would like to say something. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to introduce and get your point across, and then Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Samia Chowdhury, Cabinet Member for Leisure Services. I just would like to say it's really nice to see the performance, and I wanted to make a comment, especially with the last 5 to 6 months, with all the crisis time with COVID-19. Recycling team and Green Space 360 worked extremely hard, from opening with the parks team opening playgrounds and closing that, or working with cemeteries and everything what I can see, and I have seen them working hard. So just wanted to say I think it's a very good report, and I would like to thank everybody who have worked hard. Recycling team, I've had a personal experience with them in the lockdown time, picking up extra bags and working extremely hard for our residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to remind Cabinet members, if you're going off screen, you're going to walk away, can you turn your camera off, and can you put it on mute if you're not speaking? That would be very helpful. I know we all forget these things. So Councillor Khan, thank you, Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just wanted to say that when you look at what we've been through for the last 6 months, and then we look at other companies outside of what we do, they're going through so much difficulties. They're getting loans continuously. Some of the best businesses that you thought that probably didn't need any help are getting loans from banks, etc. They're furloughing. And so this is a very common thing for us to be able to look into the future and move forward in a constructive, in a healthy environment, to be able to take a loan anyway. So I'm all for that. And I think if we want to grow and go further, we have to invest. And I think you're probably wondering, why is it? It's quite a lot of money. But actually, when you look at the track record of the work that's being done and and how our residents actually have fed back to us with the work that these companies are doing and how impressed they've been, I think the only way is up. And if we as an organisation can continue that through further investment, we'll see that. And I think it's the right way forward. And me, on a personal note, I mean, most residents know my road was recently cleaned by a whole team of people, and it looks wonderful. And whenever they come round around Thursday, when they come to get the bins, people are still clapping, still really appreciative of the work that's being done. So I think when we look at our suite of companies, it's absolutely amazing job, and I fully support the further investment in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Khan. Any other further questions or comments? Anyone? Put your hand up. Okay, so I'll move the report. I just wanted, I'm sorry, Guy, for taking your thunder by praising your all the staff and companies and yourself. I do apologise, but that's a prerogative of the chair and the leader, I'm afraid, sometimes. So I apologise for that. But I just wanted to say some of the emails I received and handwritten notes during the lockdown from residents who are so pleased with the services they received from council staff, including all our Lambton staff, was really humbling. And our staff worked exceptionally hard and well and acted professionally at all times. Even to the point where I gave a bottle of whiskey, because I'm not a whiskey drinker, so I was pleased to get rid of it in one sense, to the crew who came down my street on the recycling. I'm pleased to say they didn't open it while I was there, and they put it with the rest of the presents they'd received that day. So a personal experience to me, how grateful I was for them. So a seconded report, we're asked to note on the agree the details and recommendations on page 239. Is there anyone doesn't agree or is not happy with those recommendations? No hands going up, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Councillor Lambert and team. Okay, we're now moving on to agenda item 7. Councillor Rajawat. Councillor Rajawat, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much, Leader. I think this is probably a good time in light of the discussion we've just had on the Lambton companies. And I have to say how pleased I am to see that they're going from strength to strength, especially with so many who were willing it to fail. We've shown that we can really pull it out of the bag, and all credit goes to Guy and the team there. This is a review. My report is a review on the contract procedure rules, which were last updated in 2018, I think it was. I'm just going to sort of go through some of the highlights, some of the changes that Cabinet need to be aware of. And probably the first one actually that follows nicely from the reports we've just been discussing is our considerations, our first consideration as a council when we are tendering new work out, and that is to look to our trading companies first and see whether they are able to offer the service that we require wherever possible. And that is always going to be a first consideration before we approve any external tender, which is really positive, and I hope will help the trading companies again go from strength to strength as they're getting external business as well. Further to that, the theme that you mentioned, Leader, around the Hounslow pound is something that's going to be really important post-COVID. And to sort of, we've been very conscious of supporting our local businesses. And so now it will be very easy for our procurement team to procure or directly award contracts to local businesses if the contract is under £30,000, which I think is quite a positive step, and I think will lead to the Hounslow pound being spent in Hounslow, supporting Hounslow businesses in the work that they do. Another theme that I sort of pick out is sort of supporting the climate emergency that we've declared, and to that extent we're strengthening the criteria so that there is a greater focus on both social value but also environmental outcomes as well. So those who are assessing procurement tenders will need to take those into consideration as well, and that's formal. And then anything that changes within a tendered contract will need to have a note sort of scoping out the timelines of those changes. So those are the main changes within the procedure rules. I hope Cabinet will agree with me. Procurement has been particularly strong. It's stronger than I remember when I was first elected, and we're building on that so that we can continue being successful. And I formally move the report.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Rajawat. Anyone else would like to make a comment or questions? Councillor Bath.
Thank you, Leader. It's just a comment, really. I mean,
just give it a second, Lily.
Oh, sorry.
Right. You can go now. It's
Sorry,
a little
I forgot to wait for the red box. Right. Just to say, I welcome the report, and just wanted to say that I absolutely support the principles behind the changes of the contract procedure rules, and I'm particularly welcome not just us looking at our own in-house trading companies to generate income for ourselves, but also to the fact that we are going to be looking locally where we can to procure. And I think that's going to be hugely important now moving forward in terms of COVID, so that we try and strengthen our local community, our economy as much as possible. So I think, yeah, absolutely welcome it. Thank you. Well done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bath. Councillor Khan.
Okay, I think I'm live. Yes. So this concept of the Hounslow pound is a wonderful concept, and it's an easy one that people can recognise and actually understand as well. So when we talk to our residents and we say, look, Hounslow pound, you know, basically what it means is we're spending money within, we're keeping and we're circulating it within. The key thing about this, whenever I look at this kind of concept, is that if we can raise the economic viability of our residents locally, not only does it help them, their families, it helps everybody else. So the idea of helping everyone come out of poverty is the way that everyone progresses. So if we look at our businesses, our organizations that are struggling so much in today's time, and we help them, that in turn helps everybody else. And I think that's the really key thing about that. And I commend the thought process and the team that's led by Councillor Rajwat to bring up this concept, because I think it's absolutely amazing that we do that, because not only do we have so many different types of industries in London Borough of Hounslow, so much so that many of them, we know that a third of our industry is a service related industry, and we have so many businesses that we are in that industry. So I think it's absolutely ideal, and I love the fact that we've got arts as well, and so many small businesses, and I totally recommend this report, and thank you very much for the team working.
Councillor Khan, thanks very much. Councillor Rajwat, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. Sorry, Councillor Khan raises a really important point, and actually this report kind of builds on a little bit of the work that we've all been doing as a cabinet post-COVID around the Shop Local campaign that was funded by the EU. You know, again, that idea of a Hounslow pound being spent in Hounslow and local people going to shop in our high streets and local village centres is really important. So I'm glad, Councillor Khan, you made the point. I always forget. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And just very finally, I always forget to do this, but I think it's really important that I put on record two particular thanks. A lot of the recommendations that have come out of this have come as a result of an overview and scrutiny review into contract procedures, especially around the social value. So I just want to put on record my thanks to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and in particular the procurement team led by Mark Pearson as well. You know, as Councillor Khan said, this is a really comprehensive report, and it gives us a sound footing to then review it in a few years' time when things start getting a little bit more back to normal. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat and Councillor Khan. So I'd like to second the report. Before I do so, I'd like to echo the comments that Councillor Rajwat just said. Mark Pearson, the Overview and Scrutiny team, they do a lot of work behind the scenes. The work Cabinet have been doing, and I've been doing with the Chamber of Commerce in both Hounslow and Brentford, they will welcome this. They've been very keen that we look at the supply chain, and we know with the demise of the airline industry, the crisis it's going through at the moment, and the absolute disastrous effect it will have on many, many residents in Hounslow and businesses. We've got to do all we can. So I implore everyone to think about the Hounslow pound and that we shop local. So I'm doing that as much as I can. We had a fantastic flower market, first time in Chiswick on Sunday, over 7,000 people, not only buying at the market stalls, but also supporting local businesses as well. So it's a great effort by everyone. And we need to do more of that because we are facing really difficult challenges over the next weeks and months with the ending of furlough, ending of the ban on evictions. There are many families in this borough over the next weeks and months are going to be greatly affected by COVID, not just in the physical sense. So I welcome this, and as I say, I put another plug in. Hounslow Pound, keep it local. Right, so we've been asked to approve the recommendations on page 273, agenda item 1 on that, appendix A. Everyone happy with that? Does anyone object to this? No, I've got no hands going up. No one voicing any opposition. Right, okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 8. Again, is financial monitoring from, I'll ask Councillor Rajawat to take this forward.
Thank you very much, Leader. So Cabinet will be familiar with this update report. This covers budget monitoring for period 4. And I suppose from the outset, what I would say is, the figures on the page obviously should never be ignored. It is showing that we've got an underspend, and that's in large part because we met our commitment, not at the last budget, but the budget before, to look at items that were overspending and really work hard to bring them under control. Not everything is completely under control, but we've got a better idea of where we are on those things, and we're looking to manage the market, manage demand as best as possible. And I suppose we should never not congratulate ourselves for the success, for successes like that, but it does come with the big caveat that COVID has changed everything. So some of the impact of COVID, whilst felt in this report, will become more stark as the year goes along and into the next financial year and the financial year after that. So whilst I'm keen to point out that there is an underspend, I think it's one that we will continue to monitor in the same way that we've been monitoring our spends within our portfolios up to now really well. At the last budget, I made a commitment on behalf of Cabinet to look at our capital programme, and this report reflects some of the work that's been done with that. Actually quite timely again because of COVID, and some of the slippages that become apparent because of COVID having an effect in Hounslow. So you'll see some recommendations around the rephasing of the capital fund, the general fund capital programme and the HRA capital programme as well. I won't go into particular detail on those recommendations. And then there's a further set of recommendations on the digital and IT strategy as well, which I also commend. It's an area that we've done a lot of work on that does need addressing, and I know Councillor Curran will appreciate Cabinet support in implementing some of these recommendations as well. So with that, I formally move the report and happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from Cabinet members? No? Okay, I will second the report, and I would just like to talk about the future and my extreme concerns, as I've mentioned, about the effects of COVID and the long-term effect that will have on the financial position of this council and many others. And we know, if you look at the London councils, many of those other councils in a very different place to where we are. It's because we're a prudent council that we're in a good financial position, but we must keep that up, and it's going to be very challenging because there are costs that we're expected, because there will be increases for costs for adult social care, for children's services as a result of COVID. It's also our loss of income, which is really will be stark, and it's a phrase that Councillor Rajawat used. That loss of income from charges, etc., will have a dramatic effect on the budget going forward. So we have to prepare I think, for some difficult decisions later on in this financial year and possibly in the following year. But I'm grateful for all the work that everyone's doing. Again, it's amazing. I went to the office today for the first time in 6 months. It felt very weird indeed. And if I was honest, I'd say I feel more comfortable being back at home on my laptop rather than in the office, because I got in the lift and you can only have 2 people in the lift and you have to face the wall of the lift. You can't face inwards or along. It's a bit weird. And yeah, I could understand why people are nervous about going back to the office, especially if you're traveling on public transport. We want everyone to encourage to do that if they feel safe to do that. That's really important. But again, I keep plugging, we have to support the residents and businesses in this borough to keep that Hounslow pound moving around in the circle so it doesn't go off somewhere. And we need to be spending that money here. So shop local, think of the Hounslow pound. I will come back to you, Councillor Khan. I'm just going to second the report, ask you to agree. No, I'll tell you what, I'll stop. I'll let Councillor Khan say his bit, then I'll do the final bit.
Thank you, Leader. I was just going to make a point when you said we're doing all out what we can to support the Hounslow pound. And one of the interesting facts that I didn't mention is that the work that the transport team are doing with all the social distancing and the street space programme, they're allowing more people to come shop, not drive, but actually come and enjoy themselves and cycle and walk. It means they come to the shopping centres more frequently, but they don't come once and spend lots of money, but they come more frequently and spend less, so hence spending more money overall. So that's a brilliant example of how that £1 is being spent locally and we're creating those environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Khan. So we're asked to, if there's any final comments, questions, no. We're asked to note and approve items on page 296 and then over to 297 and then over to 298. Is everyone happy with those recommendations? Yeah. Anyone against? No? Okay, so that's approved. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 9 and it's Councillor Pritcham-Garrawell.
Thank you, Leader. I'm Councillor Pritcham-Garrawell from Hounslow Central Ward and a cabinet member for customer service and corporate performance. And this is Q1 performance report of 2020-21. This report highlights the immediate impact of the first full quarter of the COVID-19 pandemic and shows performance at the height of lockdown, shielding, and social distancing. It also provides service-specific detail, which can be read alongside Council's COVID-19 response and recovery overview, which was agreed by the Cabinet in June. The recovery plan, which will come to the Cabinet on October, will set out new areas of focus and activities and will itself inform a new suite of performance measures, which will come to the Cabinet later on this year. The detailed breakdown of the corporate plan outcomes is provided in the Appendix 1. Cabinet is asked to note the report, and I'll move the report.
Thanks very much, Pritcham. I'm happy to second the report. I'll just add that, again, it shows, if you look at the detailed report, that the range and scope of what we do as a council is enormous, and we've done that in the most difficult circumstances, not only because of the difficult financial position we've been in since 2010, but also with COVID. So again, thanks to Pritcham and all of his officers and all of their staff who've done so much to keep us going. And it's important that we have this data so we can look at the checks and balances of what we're doing and always look to improve services. So this may not get the bangs and whistles that some reports get, but it's really important. So Councillor Rajat, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. Just following on from your point, I take offence to those that say we only congratulate ourselves. Actually, looking at this data and how important it is, I think every lead member looks at it quite seriously and asks questions of their officers as a result of this data, and really does put in place plans to deal with it. And this goes hand in hand with some of the financial monitoring that lead members do, looking at their budgets on a line by line basis. So hopefully, I somehow doubt it sometimes, but this puts to rest this myth that we're only here to congratulate ourselves on successes, but actually we look at the whole picture and try and get it right.
Yeah, agreed. I think having a detailed performance report is really important because it helps us review services and look how we can change and develop them and make them better while being cost effective. So it is really important. So thank you, Pritam and Councillor Rajvat, for that. Does anyone else like to say anything? Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Pritam, for the report, and it's obviously good to see that we are carrying on providing some of the most critical services that we need to do. But I just did want to congratulate ourselves actually on one particular area, and that is around housing and homelessness. And I know it sometimes goes unnoticed. And people do an awful lot of work in the background, and in fact, when we first entered the COVID period, the pandemic, I was really worried about our ability and how we were going to cope with getting people off the streets and helping people who needed accommodation. And I'm really pleased, and I continue to be pleased by the fact that actually there's some incredibly hard-working people in the borough who continue to provide an excellent sort of service to some of the most vulnerable people in our borough. So I think we should congratulate ourselves for that and all the other things that we've been able to provide. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but that's why we have these performance reports. So yeah, well done.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Anyone else? So I would just like to add again my thanks, but just thinking about the numbers, to think we had 22,000 people in the borough who were shielded. Every one of those was contacted or visited within days, and that was kept up for weeks. So a huge effort. And I would also just like to say again my thanks to individuals and community groups who really stepped up to the mark and did all they could to support the council in its work and support their local communities, their neighbours and friends. So it really was a team effort, and I think it's reflected in this report. It brought the best out of Hounslow. There's no question of that. So I'm happy to second the report. So we've had no objections to the recommendation. So I think that's unanimous. Right. So we now move on to agenda item 10. Any other urgent business? I've not been notified of any other urgent business, and now we move on to general item. Date of next meeting was 6 PM on Tuesday, the 20th of October. That time may change, it may go back later, as we're just discussing timings at the moment with officers and cabinet, because some people are now back to their normal work time, so we need to take account of that. So that's the end of the meeting. So if you're a member of the public or a councillor, thank you very much for watching. I hope it was interesting. We'll see you again soon in October. Now, so we can exclude the members of the public. Councillors who are not on cabinet will still be on this call. So if I would just remind cabinet members of that, what's your P and Q?